Vice President Kashim Shettima arrives at the council chamber of the State House, Abuja, for the 146th meeting of the National Economic Council. Governors, deputy governors, ministers, presidential aides are attending the meeting, chaired by the Vice President. On the agenda of the meeting are issues of rural electrification, alternative energy source, and state police, among others. Between January and November this year, the national electricity grid has collapsed at least 11 times, throwing many parts of the country into darkness and crippling business activities. NEC considers this development worrisome as it presses for states' involvement in electricity generation.
Council resolved that Nigeria needs a reformed and diversified electricity system, apart from the one from National Grid. It further observed that by empowering states, accessibility and affordability of electricity can be enabled, ensuring that all regions can effectively meet their specific energy needs.
To expedite action, a 13-person committee made up of governors, ministers, and heads of parastatals is constituted and mandated to deepen states' engagement within the Electricity Reform Act 2023. Meanwhile, states are encouraged to partner the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI, for solar energy development and rural electrification.
The Council urged NASENI to help the states' governments in repairing the broken down tractors in different states, and urge them to continue with these great initiatives. Impressed by that, most of the subnational governments has expressed willingness to henceforth partner and patronize NASENI in making sure that all these efforts and initiative of theirs comes to fruition.
NEC also received an update on the establishment of state police.
The Council mandated these remaining states and FCT to make their submissions within the next 1 week, and resolved to present a consolidated state's position on the state police to the National Economic Council at our next meeting.
The Federation account is also presented.
Mr. Gentlemen of the press, thank you for your time.
NEC received a presentation by the National Chairman of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission seeking for an alternative funding. From the Presidential Villa, Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
All right, so we've got Dr. Amadi, former chairman of NEC, joining us now to shed some light on what you just heard. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, so talk to us about this. NEC having this meeting, they say they're trying to deepen the state involvement in electricity generation. We know there's been a lot happening over time, but this, we imagine, isn't any different from them leveraging on the electricity bill, which was signed into law by the president, isn't it?
Well, if I got it right, I think first there is a change in the electricity regulatory framework now. With the new Electricity Act, the Constitution that I think President Buhari signed, and the new act that President Tinubu signed, the states now have no more encumbrance, no more constraints, no more restrictions in terms of legal regulatory regime. And many of the states, at least about 10 of those states, have applied to NEC to get exemption from federal regulation. So states like Enugu are now fully authorized to create their own electricity market. States like Edo, states like Ondo, Ekiti are almost fully, past the post. Now, what is missing, and that's really what we'll be careful about, is that it's not enough to claim the rights and be given the right to have your own grids. The states are still struggling with the quality regulatory policies, first, understanding of the markets, ability to create transactions that are sustainable. If the federal government is struggling, when we're there, they started the reform without proper structural, institutionalization of procedure process. Even when they created NEC, which I chaired, there are still a lot of things that were not done before we went to privatization. So I think that what is the governors should be doing to their platform is to orchestrate capability to develop for them how they can now create regional markets. Many states have gone on their own, Ekiti, Ondo, Enugu, Edo. My sense is that states will struggle to have any viable electricity market. A few states might get it right, but many will fail. And that failure will be colossal. I think we are going on a second era. In 1999, we went bullish on this reform without putting the, carefully thinking through and be more strategic. We went into privatize, and see where we are now. So my sense will first, the states should know that nobody stops them, but they're stopping themselves. Viability should be number one, structure number two. And so instead of all the states feel like they do with everything, airports, states have airports. It's like a brand, everybody goes for the same thing. Some states really shouldn't be having their own state electricity market, or should be having regional. And I think there should be need now to bring the experts together to think it from a strategic national perspective, even though states have the right. But again, we shouldn't create bedlam, which is what I see happening now.
Shed a little more light on this. I mean, you say the state, some of them will struggle to have a viable market and that they should have on a regional basis. I don't know if that came up in NEC. Anyway, since they have a committee, maybe that committee, listening to narratives like this, may factor it in when they do submit their reports. And imagine I want to apply to all of them across board. So could you just drill that a little more specifically? Which states do you think will struggle, and which area would you suggest should come together? Because now that NEC is, some of them are applying for regulatory oversight and getting it, what should be done and by who or which states?
I think that's an important question. Okay, so I think some states have advantage. Lagos State, for example, has an advantage, served by two discos that are fairly viable than the rest, the Iko and the Ikeja. Lagos has some experience practicalizing the Aeron, even though it didn't work. It has Ebin, one of the biggest load providers in this market. So he has a much more established networks, whether distribution or transmission. And of course, demographics in terms of customer type. The business districts, they can socialize the losses, they can hike tariffs, they can even create eligible customers to provide financial support for the Lagos electricity market. So Lagos can thrive if they put the right things together. Now, some states, let me give an example without being disrespectful. Take states like Ekiti, Ondo, maybe even Anambra, maybe even Enugu. These are small states.
Okay, thanks, Frozen.
Oh, yes, he is. But, he's raised a very vital issue with the question of capacity. Dr. Sam, Dr. Amadi, yes, we lost you for a bit. And I think you were just answering. You were saying that Enugu, Anambra, they are small states. Yeah. So, yes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, is their size an advantage or a disadvantage? That's where we lost you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, are you hearing me? I can hear you.
Loud and clear, Dr. Amadi.
Okay, so I say a state like Ondo, for example, or Ekiti or Enugu, their supply is small. Enugu receives like 74, 73 megawatts a day. Enugu is doing well now in terms of going ahead. Enugu is number one on this process. So they set up a regulatory commission manned by a very competent person. But the trick will be, how would they?
Oh dear. Just when he was getting to the critical part. Yeah, the trick will be just go and finish that sentence. You are saying I can hear you. You are saying the trick will be how will they do what? How will they? That's what we lost.
How will they manage? How will they deal with 74 megawatts is too small for a state? So you need to look for how do we get power quick? Number one. Number two, TCN is there, the transition service provider. How do you create? So some of these states, even if you create states their own market, those markets are small in size, consumer. Many of them are rural communities. Look at our national market, where there's so much losses. Tariffs can't go up because you are going to cause a rate shock. Earnings are low. The socioeconomic indicators, poverty, rural poverty, were less earning power. So what that means, therefore, is that you need some scale to do electricity planning. You need to have customer base that can support, a full commercial electricity market, because you need some business customers who can pay more and take more. You need them to cross-subsidize the residential. So the point I'm making is that these states are not viable. They're not viable first. Their business processes are not fully accountable and processed in a way that gives confidence to investors. The federal government is struggling to even create regulatory certainty to de-risk the sector. So think about what will happen to states that don't even have those capacities, don't have standardized procedure, policy-wise, capability, the transparency, that's on the governance side. On the physical side, the finance to do some heavy lifting, improve their distribution network. Many of these states have been helped because they are within a national grid. So can you now create your own grid? So I think that what this new move should do for them is to enable some of them take over consumer protection in their state, take over electrification by using renewable energy at a scale that is scalable, small, doable, and then work as group of states within the region, take for example Southwest, take for example South or Southeast, and pull together their market, their regulatory, standardize the regulatory process so that there will be scale. Somebody goes to Southeast, you know that look, he can sell power, he distributes about, and these are contiguous areas that you don't have to have. Igbo State have their own electricity regulatory commission. Anambra has their own. Enugu has. Abia has. Everybody has. And none of these markets are viable in themselves to attract real investment at a scale that you outperform.
I mean, you've touched on some part that I was going to pick up on, because it depends on the kind of structure, the power supply structure that they were going to adopt, which will speak to their viability or otherwise. But since, if I could just follow up on that part where you're talking about them pulling together, Enugu, maybe if we look at population, a little over 5 million. And then Abia, under 5 million. And then they got geometric, Professor Batinaji doing his own there, bypassing the grade. So talk to us in terms of if Abia is able to have that, should Enugu then say, look, we may not necessarily need this, we can go to geometric and then the supply or probably extend to the entire south? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. So if geometric has a capability, and I think they do, then Enugu will be thinking around how do you converge regulatory framework in both states. So you have incumbent provider in Abia, which may be capacity to add additional 30, 40, 50 megawatts or 100 megawatts, and then have a franchise area that includes Enugu State. So the point is this. Look at Europe, for example. Countries like the major supplier in the UK is a French-based electricity company. So Europe, because it's a contiguous business, if you like, regional market, you see that most of the service providers, grid managers, transmission networks are interstate in terms of the crisscross boundaries of countries. And what has helped them is because they have similar converging regulatory framework. The EU competition policy is similar. So you can have multiple accreditation and licensing. You operate in Abia, you can also operate in Enugu, you can also operate in Imo. And so if they take away from the idea of contract set up structure by yourself, like Imo State, the Enugu Disc Group, you can bid and take over that company and be a what they call a dominant shareholder that enables you now as state governors to inflate the finances and improve the change management strategy and use that structure to provide a much more guaranteed sustainable electricity supply. And again, NEC has done some work. Forget that there's no power, but NEC has done good work in terms of providing regulatory framework, embedded generation regulations, all those things. What I want to see is a more managerial approach rather than this legalistic approach of creating our own market, drafting laws. They're important. But I think from a national development strategy, the federal government should lead the states to come together and say, look, you have this power, but look at the way markets are arranged and structured. Markets do not neatly tie to notions of legality or sovereign Southeast, sovereign India. Markets themselves are fluid. So you need to now say, how do you realign this your new power to align with market structure so that you could easily upgrade services, you easily optimize, increment, and then you move on to a scale sustainability. We don't want to have states, balkanize the national grid at the end of the day, darkness in 30% or 40 or 50% of those states, the grid has collapsed. They have brought in some roguish contractors, set up contraptions that are not working. I think this new Electricity Act, a new regime, could be either a great boost for electricity or it can be the biggest tragedy, where we now have a country that has 36 or 34 or 32 dark spots where total collapse. And I think what pains me, because they need to sit down and structure and do the rigor and plan it and say, yes, let's complain. Southeast, that's the reason why Southeast shouldn't have a single regulator. Through some kind of protocol, let's make the different laws, but those laws come back. And because that's a market that is borderless. That's just no distinction between Area and Onitsha market or Economy in Imo State. No distinctions.
I get the point you're trying to make. I mean, from what you've analyzed so far, it does appear that we're dealing with a double-edged sword. It can either, boost the market or, create total confusion. And I think a part of what people would really like to understand is what then will be the role for NERC? Will NERC cease to exist as we currently know it? And if they continue to exist, what exactly will be their role? Will they be overseeing all the other bodies? What would they be doing?
Well, by the time the 36, NEC gives 36 states their legal status as they are planning, then NEC will simply exist in only one way. NEC will just be there to manage the network, transmission network, and to manage FCT, which is the federal territory, and that's all. So NEC will not be like FAC in the US that deals only with interstate transmission services, and then each state will be its own licensor for this group for generation and other things. So that's what NEC will become actually redundant, and that sense of stripping away from regulation across the states and focusing on Abuja and transmission network in terms of TCN, which remains the federal licensee. And that's a tricky one because these states are not going to set up transmission networks, and TCN work is more regional and national than state-based. So if you look at exchanges in Benin or whatever, it serves the region. And so you need to, in my view, align the network, this state-based electricity district to align with the transmission, which is more regional and national. So NEC will regulate TCN and the FCT, and maybe if there are federal interventions in states, maybe NEC can, but primarily NEC will go to a federal regulator, interstate transmissions and FCT.
Well, some people say maybe the name would then need to change as well to reflect the new status that it will have. But I'm a little curious as to how, would that be a waste of capacity? Because part of what your questions you're currently raising is the capacity of these state regulatory bodies. We have seen that the number of things that states have taken on, they haven't exactly done. Very few of them have done, if at all, have done an excellent job of it, especially if it has to do with politics. I mean, talk about CX. We're still having conversations around state policing, and there are questions around that area. I do not know whether you think that when it comes to capacity, do you think that states will be able to fare well with the establishment of state electricity regulatory commissions?
I think they should. They should. If they restrict it, there's a realism. First, there are a lot of work states can do on consumer side of it. Issues. So that would be very good. That would be nice if they can do that. But what I don't want them is to assume that because we have a regulatory commission, we can make our own rules, we can license discourse. They now think that is about licensing the same Nigerians who failed in the current, I mean, look, in the federal government, they say if edges fail, why should mothers be so gung-ho? The federal government is failing, in my view. Unfortunately, we are part of that. They're failing. How dare you think that you can easily succeed? So my point is, you can have this regulatory commission, but be careful, realistic, and what they can do a lot of things at the downstream through electrification, and do a lot with consumer protection. They can do a lot also, even licensing off-grid and small modular. But again, they can also take over licensing the discos, but recognize that they need to perhaps collaborate with other states to have the discos operate, improve the disco performance, maybe buy over some of the major shares, and therefore be in a place to put in more efficiency. The real point here is, look, don't be too legalistic. Legal fetishism. We have the law. We can make rules. We can make new regulations. NEC today, we have the best regulatory framework in the whole of Africa. World Bank attests to that. But we don't have power because you don't get back to the managerial business side of it. You have to get the system working, knowing that what we want is first prioritizing their strategy. We want to have more generation distribution capacity to optimize their 6,000, 7,000 megawatts. They need to move to the next level of increasing, expanding the available capacity to take maybe 13,000. They move to the next level of increasing their 30,000 nameplate to 30,000. So this sequencing calls for real diagnostics and the ability to understand how the finance is moving, this market is moving, how everything is moving, so that it don't just stay caught in legalism, or we have a regulator who've created a law. That's my worry. I'm not saying it's bad, they should have it, but be careful that, look, to make this work, you have to go do more than new laws, get more than new bodies, but the ones we created, if you ask me, some of the things we created at the federal level were not needed at the time we did this transaction. Maybe now, you should have started with the basic things of optimizing the performance of NEC, of NEPA. You should have created a workable, commercially and corporately viable entity. When I came to the market, I did the first account of the so-called NEPA. They didn't have any account. Today, they don't even have a credible customer number. We did the first metering inquiry. So basically, you are running before you can walk. You are creating illusion. You are not really dealing with the real structural things that you need to build a sustainable movement. That's really what I want to care about. Look at China. Look at Egypt. Look at other places. They don't go on that side of reform, new things, new institutions. They basically get the basics right and they take off in a measured and sustainable manner. That's what I want to see. And I think the regional markets could be better for the states to come together and pool resources. And it's a natural market. And it creates more incentive for investors too.
We'll definitely expect that committee set up by NEC will be able to at least tell themselves the truth, because they are the ones who are there. They should know that these options are the way to go. Thank you very much indeed for your perspective this morning, Dr. Sam Amadi.
Thank you.